Welcome back to the Oracle FLEXCUBE ODT screen development series. In Part 2, we covered function generation, header information, preferences, and control string. In this Part 3, we will focus on data sources and their configuration. We will understand how to create data sources, define properties, establish relationships, add columns, follow Oracle recommended best practices, and delete data sources safely. Before developing a screen in ODT, the first design step is to identify the required data sources and their relationships. After that, the developer logically groups the data sources into data blocks, designs the screen layout, creates field sets, defines LOVs, attaches call forms and launch forms, designs the summary screen, and finally defines actions. Therefore, data source design becomes the foundation for all the remaining ODT development activities. What are data sources? The first step in developing a function is to identify the tables and views involved in that function. The developer must also identify the relationships between those data sources and determine the appropriate data source type based on the screen functionality. This means that, before designing the screen, we should clearly understand which tables are required, which views are involved, how they are related, and how each source will be used. Creating a new data source. Oracle ODT provides two methods for creating a new data source. In the first method, right-click the data source node in the browser tree and select the Add option. In the second method, left-click the data source node and then click the Add Data Source icon available at the top right of the data source screen. Both methods open the screen for selecting and creating a new data source. Data source name and alias. When adding a data source, the developer selects the data source name from the available list of values. This list retrieves the objects available in the business schema. An alias name is useful when the same table is used more than once in the design. Different aliases allow the developer to distinguish between different instances of the same table. For example, if the table name is CSTB_columns and the alias is A, the resulting data source name becomes CSTB_columns_A. Data source properties Part 1. After creating a data source, its properties must be configured. The data source field is read-only and is automatically populated with the data source name. The master property identifies whether the selected data source is the master data source for the screen. Every screen must have one and only one master data source. Relation type defines whether the relationship with the parent is one-to-one or one-to-many. The multi-record property identifies whether the data source represents a single entry or multiple entry record structure. A master data source cannot be configured as a multi-record data source. PK columns and PK types are mandatory properties. If multiple primary key columns are required, they must be separated using a tilde. The corresponding data types must also be provided in the same order. Every data source except the master data source must have a parent. The relation field defines the relationship between the parent and the current data source. The parent data source must appear on the left side of the relationship. For example, a customer can be the parent and customer accounts can be the child. The relationship may use customer number and branch code to connect both data sources. Oracle also specifies that only the configured parent and current data source can participate in the relation. A third table cannot be introduced. Data source properties Part 3. Where clause and default order by are optional data source properties. The where clause is used when only selected records from a data source are required. The keyword where should not be included while entering the condition. During query processing, this condition is added to the generated query logic. Default order by can be provided for a multi-record data source. It controls the order in which records are retrieved. The keyword order by should also not be included. Together, these properties help filter the data, sort the results, and influence the generated queries. Data source types. Oracle ODT provides 4 data source types: normal, query, in-only, and summary. For a normal data source, screen data is persisted in the table, and the generated package contains the required persistence code. A query data source is used only for querying. ODT generates packages without insert or update statements for that data source. For an in-only data source, insert and update statements are not generated. The data source is included in the request XML but not in the response XML. A summary data source is used for summary processing and is not considered while generating the normal processing packages. The developer should select the data source type based on the required screen behavior. Mandatory and upload table. The mandatory property is used when at least one record must be provided for the data source. This may apply to a multi-record data source that requires a minimum of one record or to a mandatory single record data source. The upload table property is used when adapter upload is required for the function ID. In that case, the data source must be mapped to the corresponding upload table. Therefore, mandatory controls minimum record availability, while upload table supports adapter upload mapping. Data source columns. After creating and configuring the data source, the required columns must be added. The developer can right-click the data source and select the required columns. All columns required by the design should be selected. Every column identified as a primary key at the data source level must be included. When the footer template is maintenance audit, the audit columns should not be manually selected for the master data source. ODT automatically attaches those audit columns while generating the units. Data source column properties. Each selected data source column has its own properties. Column name is an information field and cannot be changed. Max length is initially defaulted from the column definition, but the developer can override it. This value controls the maximum text length that can be entered at runtime. Data type is populated automatically and is non-editable. Block name displays the data block to which the column has been mapped. Field name displays the corresponding data block field. Upload table column defines the upload table column mapped to the data source column. If this value is left blank, ODT assumes that the upload table column name is the same as the data source column name. The Not Required in Upload Table option should be selected when the column is not mapped to any upload table column. Guidelines and Best Practices Part 1. Oracle recommends following a defined sequence while creating data sources. First, identify all tables and views required for the function. Next, establish the hierarchy, relations, and relation types among those data sources. Ensure that the complete and correct relationship is defined. Select the appropriate data source type, such as normal, query, in-only, or summary. Also ensure that the function has only one master data source. These steps help create a stable foundation before moving to data blocks and screen design. Guidelines and Best Practices Part 2. Data source names should follow the standard FLEXCUBE naming conventions. Oracle recommends avoiding views wherever possible. A view should not be configured as a normal data source because the generated package may contain insert statements against that view. Views should generally be used only for query purposes by selecting the query data source type. Primary key columns and types should be selected according to the design logic. For a one-to-many relationship, the child data source should normally have enough primary key columns to uniquely identify each child record. Finally, the parent data source must appear above all its child data sources in the browser tree. Deletion of data sources. A data source can be deleted either by using the delete icon on the data source screen or by selecting delete from the right-click menu. However, deletion must be performed carefully. When a data source is deleted, all references to that data source and its columns are also removed from the RADSML. This includes data block fields and other references that depend on those fields. Deletion is allowed only when the data source was created in the current release. If it was created in a previous release, the developer will not be allowed to delete it. Oracle therefore recommends careful data source design because redesign may become difficult or impossible in later releases. Real banking example. Let us understand the concept through a practical banking example. Assume that we are designing a customer-related FLEXCUBE screen. The process begins with the customer. Customer master stores the customer's demographic and KYC-related information. Customer accounts contains the accounts linked to that customer. Standing instructions contains recurring instructions maintained for automated transactions. Limits provides the applicable limit information, while collateral contains collateral linked to facilities or loans. These related data sources can then support a single screen display where the user can view the complete customer information in one place. This is a training illustration and is not taken directly from the Oracle Guide. Interview questions. Let us quickly review some important interview questions. What is a data source in Oracle FLEXCUBE ODT? Why must every screen have one and only one master data source? What is the difference between a one-to-one and a one-to-many relationship? What are the 4 data source types supported by ODT? Why are primary key columns important? And finally, why should database views generally be avoided for normal data sources? Try to answer these questions using both the Oracle definitions and practical banking examples. Summary. In this session we learned what data sources are and why they are the first step in ODT screen development. We covered how to create a new data source, configure its name and alias, and maintain data source properties. We understood the different data source types: normal, query, in-only, and summary. We also learned how to add and configure data source columns. Finally, we reviewed Oracle recommended guidelines, best practices, and the rules for deleting data sources. In the next part of this series we will move to data blocks. Thank you for watching. I hope this video helped you understand data sources and their configuration in Oracle FLEXCUBE ODT. Please like the video, share it with your colleagues, and subscribe to AK Next Gen Vibes for more step-by-step Oracle FLEXCUBE and banking technology tutorials. Keep learning, keep implementing, and keep growing.